fit. That's how I function. Show you real love, don't take it offense. Nigga that never bow down and they'll never stomach.
Hey everybody, this is Marco Amaya on the Patriot Torch, and I wanted to address the credit card economy. Because I saw in an article recently, it said the average American has like $38,000 in credit card debt, and that's excluding the mortgage debts. And so we're living in a time where people don't own what they have. And it's funny because people have this illusion that the market is so good and the economy is doing so well. Well, I have to disagree. If people are living off of credit card debt because they can't pay for what they have, is that a sign of a prosperous nation? That you can't get what you want, so you have to get a loan to get what you want? I mean, that doesn't make sense, and it's also a sign that there's going to be an economic collapse, because it would be way better if people just saved their money and bought things that they could actually afford, and don't buy things that you can't afford. Because if you did that, you'd also realize that it's actually good for the economy, because then prices would go down, because there'd be less people buying things, because they're buying it with credit cards that are not their money. So they feel like they have more money and they don't, because you actually end up paying more money back to the bank that loaned you, so you actually end up with less money at the end of the day. So it's pretty much people are getting into debt, being somewhat coerced into it at first, because in the real world, in order to get your first place to live, you have to have a credit score. Most people need a credit score to get their first place to live. So even to rent. And so people feel like they have to have a credit score, and so that means they have to get a credit card. And so when they get the credit card, then they feel like they have some extra money, because they haven't been informed about the financial world and how it works. So then they spend it all, and then when eventually they can't afford to pay it back, then they get another credit card to pay off the first one, because now they have more bills to pay. Their credit card bills are due, and they need more money to be able to keep up with what their lifestyle is like. So then they get the second card, then the third card to pay off the debts of the first two, and it's just a never-ending cycle of like a Ponzi scheme that this society is living off of, which is very dangerous, and it leads to a collapse, because eventually people just can't get any more credit cards. They can't pay for anything anymore, and when you have a whole population that lives like that in general, then that means that's what's going to happen. They're going to stop spending, and the economy is going to go down. It's actually overinflated in terms of its values. The prices of everything is pretty much inflated, because if everyone's buying off of money that they got from other people, from credit card banks and the government, in student loans, for example, if all that extra money went away, there was no more loans, and people actually bought what they could afford, well, they would be buying a lot less stuff. So then the prices would have to go down to try to get people to buy their stuff. And so the student loan example is very clear. Why are this tuition skyrocketing? It's because people think they have to get a loan, they have to have debt to get an education, which in some ways they're almost coerced to, in a way. If you want to have an education, you almost have to get a loan. So then it's this idea that you have to get this loan and you have to get the education to live a good life. So then they start to be enslaved to finances. That's how they indoctrinate people into the system. So then you have to get the loan, and then once you get the loan, well, the colleges, they're not going to reduce prices if everyone just keeps buying their stuff, because no one's stopping. People just keep buying our stuff. And so we're just going to keep raising prices because people just continue to pay for it. See, if people were just like, no, I can't afford that school, I'm not going to go there, because I don't have the money to do it. I'm not going to do it. Then what would happen is if you actually did that, all the prices would go down on the colleges because people wouldn't be buying it because they actually can't afford it. So that's my point here is people are getting into debt because people can't afford most of the things they actually have. And then the things that they do have that they appear to have, a lot of people don't even own that stuff because they're paying off someone else that does, that's giving them the money to buy it. Like cars and houses and all the stuff they bought for with the credit cards. So this is a dangerous economy. And then also with the U.S. government overspending and over excessively just using everyone's money to do God knows what. With a lot of it, we don't even know what exactly is done with all the money. And with the money that we do know about, they don't do shit with it. Okay, it's all socialist welfare programs that we don't like, and it's just useless. I mean, look at the public education system. It's garbage. It's garbage. I'm sorry, it's garbage. If you work in the public education system, look, I personally, I don't like it at all. I didn't learn anything that I thought was valuable other than basic math and reading. Most of it is just doesn't prepare you for life. Most of the knowledge, the real knowledge I gained on how to live in life never came from school. Never. And so it makes me also suspicious. It's like, who is, there's obviously in a public system, it means that the government and some small group of people decides what everyone learns, which is also dangerous. You leave that up to a few people. And so if you have that type of a system, it makes me wonder, well, are they purposefully not informing me on finances and on how to live life and how politics works, and is it all done on purpose? Because I think it is, if it's this useless. And at the same time, it's like, well, all these things can exist without the government. You can have private schools. These things can't exist in the free market. It's just they've indoctrinated everyone into thinking that the government has to take care of all this stuff. No, the government's purpose is to enforce your freedoms and your rights from being infringed, and also to protect us from criminals that are a danger to our rights, and to protect the borders from an invasion, okay, from a foreign entity or enemies, and have a military, okay. That's all the government really needs to be there for, okay. That's all it is. Just enforce our rights, protect the borders. That's it. Everything else is about freedom. That's why this country is so good, because of how much freedom we have, not because of how much government there is. The whole purpose of America was to make sure that the government was going to be smaller and less powerful, so that the people could prosper. But those socialists are so deep in the hole with debt that now they're very susceptible to voting for a socialist that's saying that they're going to get free money, that they're going to get their student loan forgiven. They're going to get, see, it's all about this money thing because they're in a financial trouble. So that's the danger of the credit card economy. People are in debt and are not having good financial situations, so then they gravitate towards people that are promising them financial utopia. And so that becomes a problem. That's how authoritarian happens. Authoritarian governments start building up. That's where our government is going if we don't stop the excessive spending. We need to put a cap on how much a government can spend. We have to put a cap on that. We have to put a cap on them never being able to borrow money ever again, because they're clearly abusing their power. The government as a whole is abusing the people's money, and we're paying outrageous taxes that are huge, because we used to not have income taxes, and then we have all these socialist programs now compared to where we used to be before in this country. And then surprise, surprise, our taxes are way higher. We used to have no income tax. Now we're paying at the lowest 12 to 15%, and all the way up to 50%, depending on how much you make. A total a total way to enslave people to the state and make them restricted in their growth, because it was totally unnecessary to have income tax. And it was all based on this thing we need to punish the rich. because that's how they get these socialists to vote in for authoritarianism, is saying that you're doing this to attack the rich people. It's like, no, you're destroying yourself when you vote for them, because they have to get the money from someone, right? They're not going to just get it all from rich people. Okay, Andrew Yang isn't just going to pull $12,000 a year out of his ass for you from Amazon or just from Facebook. Okay, there's ways that they con you, and then they rely on the fact that they think you're so stupid that you can't do the math yourself, and you're just going to trust them to do the math. And that's how you vote your freedoms away, when you don't understand what you're voting for. That's all these people that love Andrew Yang, they can't explain to you how it actually works, how the math actually works. They just worship him. They worship his ideas without understanding them. That's why they're duped. And so we can't live in a society we can't continue to be successful in a society that thinks like that. That doesn't want to learn things and explain things for themselves. They just rely on someone else. It's this dependency state. It's the lack of maturity into being an adult. It's somewhere along the lines these socialists were stunted in their growth, their mental growth, to think that they can't solve things. The freedom of the people can't solve things. You can't. So you have to worship your God and the government that's going to solve it for you. That it's going to give you free money, which is ridiculous because it all comes from you anyway, because the government feeds off the people. It's this stunted growth thing where you have to try to rely on someone else to solve it. It's just like, it's a really weird way to live, but that's the problem with socialism. They're the ones that vote in authoritarianism because they want the government to solve everything. That's how they create monopolies. That's what a monopoly is, when they control, they decide what to do, and you don't have a choice. Free this, free that, free healthcare, free education, blah blah blah. Then that means the government controls all that stuff, right? So just look at the public education system. It's very limited in knowledge, and it's run by the government, and you don't have a choice. Whether you have to, the only choices you have are in the private market. Big surprise. Oh, the freedom of the people in the private schools. Oh, then you have a choice. It's when the government's in control is when you don't have choices, and you have to accept it. And eventually, if the government if socialism continues to convince people that's how you help people by getting all this free money, eventually you're just going to vote all your money away to the government, because that's what happens. They have to pay for the program somehow, these social welfare programs. They pay for it with your money. So essentially you're voting your dollars away, thinking you're getting free stuff and more money. It's the total opposite. Socialism takes your money away. And it's the credit card economy, it plays right into it, because when people are you're depending on banks when you use these credit cards. So then you're letting the banks tell you what you can and can't buy, and with your credit score. It's dependency. We have to get back to the independent mentality that we make our own money, we pay for our own stuff, and we don't need the government to tell us what we can and can't get and give us so-called free stuff. It's never free. The government has to stick to its roles, which is very simple. Enforce laws that protect our rights, to enforce our rights from being infringed by criminals, and protect the borders from an invasion of foreign enemies, and have that military also. That's all there need to be. That's all there needs to be. That's it. And we need to cap the spending that they're able to do, so that they can't overspend. The government has to be permanently restricted from borrowing money, so that they can't circumvent their lack of money, because we want them to have a lack of money. The government should be lacking in money, or almost, not to the point where you can't have a military, but I'm just saying they have to have only enough money to pay for what they need to do and not extra stuff that they wasted on, and then force us to pay for all their shit that we don't even want, okay? Because the free market solves all the problems about business and everything in the economy. The free market does that. And there's a few things that we need the government for to make sure our rights aren't infringed with monopolies and things, which is incredible that we can't even enforce that now. It's crazy. Like, that's how inefficient our government is. Something has to change here. And so that's my message today. This credit card economy is creating a dependent mentality of people of dependency on other things to help them instead of being independent. And so I want to make sure that we strive towards being a society that saves money and buys things that we can actually buy, okay? So that we don't have to become enslaved to banks and enslaved to the government and think that we have to have the student loans. No, we don't. We don't have to fall into an enslavement in finances just to have freedom. It's kind of contradictory when you think about it. Because we want freedom, essentially, is to have a good life, to be free and do what you want. And financial slavery isn't going to cut it. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.